Hello and welcome to this CodeRage 7 session on HTML5 Builder, multi-tier application development. My name is Mannarino and I'm one of the Embarcadero engineers. For this session, I'm going to be using the new HTML5 Builder to create and use a C++ Builder DataSnap server and call the functions exposed by a C++ Builder DataSnap server. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar with DataSnap, DataSnap is a technology that enables rapid application creation of multi-tier applications. I'm going to use HTML5 Builder to create a client-side web application that's going to use our DataSnap REST Client Module to interact with the DataSnap server. So the DataSnap REST Client Module is a data module that lets you access a DataSnap server. We can include the data module in a web page or in another data module to be able to call the functions exposed by our DataSnap server. So here we are in HTML5 Builder, and let me show you how to create and use a DataSnap REST Client Module to access a DataSnap server and call the functions exposed by the DataSnap server. Now, for my client, I'm going to use a server web application. Now, a server web application is a web application that runs in a web browser, allowing you to use both server-side and client-side web technologies, and has built-in support for database interaction, and AJAX is also provided. Now, advanced interface localization features are also available. Now, once we deploy this server web application client to the server, it can also be accessed through a web browser from any device. From the main menu, a server web application is accessed from Home, New, HTML5 Builder Projects, Server Web Application. Our new web server project gets created with this empty server page, which is a unit1.php file, and we see it gets opened inside the design view. The server web application consists mainly of server pages, often along with server data modules and server units, although they might have any type of file. And if you wanted to add additional files to this project, I can always go to Home, Project Manager, and add files from here. So let me go back to the design view. So now the first step in creating a server web application with HTML5 Builder is designing the user interface. So as we see here, there are many components available by default for creating user interfaces. The standard category has many components like labels, edit boxes, buttons, panels, and action lists. For my web client, I want to use a label for my title. I'll use an edit box to accept input from the user. I'll use a button to submit my request to the backend DataSnap server, and the results I want to return in this bottom edit box. For all of our components, we can view and change the component's properties by using the Object Inspector. So for our label, let's change its title. And I want the title to be HTML5 Builder DataSnap Web Client. Let's change its font size. Let's go to its font. Instead of 11 pitch, we'll make it 18. And let's all change its color. So for its color, let's make it a nice magenta. Alright, let me resize it so it fits. Let's center it. For the button, let's change its caption. Instead of button 1, let's call it execute. And let's make it a bold font. So for its weight, let's make it bold. For the top edit box, let me just change its name. So instead of calling it edit 1, I'll just say E for edit, be my input box. And for the bottom, this will be my edit box for my output. My HTML5 Builder DataSnap web client user face is now complete. Now the next thing I need to do is write a response for our button click. Now for web applications, any response to users' actions such as button clicks and text field entries can be implemented as a response to an event. In HTML5 Builder, such responses are referred to as event handlers. Now, for the button component, the most typical event is a button click. So if I was to double click on the button in the designer, HTML5 Builder will create for me the skeleton code to implement an event handler for the button click event. We can now implement responses between the braces. So let's implement the response to pass the value from our top edit input box to the bottom edit output box. So in between the brackets, I'll write some PHP code. First, I'll add some comments on what I want to do. So I want to take in the input from the top edit box, and I want to pass it to the bottom edit box. Alright, so now to do this, I'll write some PHP code. So the first thing I want to get, let me get the text that I put into my top edit box. So we see here in HTML5 Builder, while I'm typing my code, I get some hints indicating the kind of parameter you need to specify appearing. Also, hints will indicate the kinds of members that are supported in a given object, that is, the properties and methods of our components. So I want to grab our top edit input box. I want to get its text. So now that I have that, I want to set the text from the top edit input box to be the text in my bottom output text box. So now I need the bottom edit box, the output box, and I want to set its text to be equal to the text from the top edit input box. So that will do that for me. So our implementation for this application is now finished. So now we can go ahead and execute our application. So let me switch from the code view back to the design view. So I want to run our application. So to run our application, I can either pick run without debugging, or I can say run with debugging, or simply press F9. So the first thing I'm asked to do is save the application. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a new folder. Let me call this my CodeRage 7 HTML5 Builder DataSnap REST Client. So that'll be the name of my folder. Unit 1 for my first PHP. Project name. I'll call it my DataSnap REST Client, and save. So once we have executed the application, the web page gets loaded on our default web browser. If we enter text on the top and hit our execute button, we see that the text that we entered in the top edit box gets displayed as text in our bottom edit box. So now that we have a web server application, the next thing we'll do is add our DataSnap REST Client Module to be able to communicate to our backend DataSnap server. So let me close our web page, go back into HTML5 Builder. So to be able to create a DataSnap REST Client Module, we do that from Home, New, Other Projects, Other Files, and here we see a DataSnap REST Client Module. So now a DataSnap REST Client Module is a data module that lets you access a DataSnap server. You can then include that data module in another data module or a web page to be able to call the functions exposed by the DataSnap server. Now, before we can create this DataSnap REST Client Module, we need to have a DataSnap server running. So I don't have a DataSnap server running yet, so I'm going to go in C++ Builder and create a new DataSnap REST application. I'm going to use C++ Builder XE3 to create my DataSnap REST application server. To do that, it's File, New, Other, C++ Builder Projects, DataSnap Server, and I'm going to select DataSnap REST application. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with DataSnap, DataSnap is Delphi's and/or C++ Builder's components for building scalable, robust, multi-tier applications that manage data safely, securely, and effectively. You can code server methods, such as stored procedures, on the middle tier server, and then we can create these very ultra-thin clients that can access connections and data sets directly from your application servers, as well as call server methods just like they were part of the client code, all the while supporting existing iApp server-based remote data modules. Now, an iApp server, so that's an interface that client datasets use to communicate with a dataset provider. So I'm going to click the DataSnap REST application wizard, and as we see, it will create for me a DataSnap server with support for REST communication and with web pages that invoke server methods using JavaScript and JSON. So the first page of the wizard lets me either create a standalone VCL application, a standalone console application, or an ISAPI dynamic link library. So I'm going to pick standalone VCL application, and this will create for me a standalone web broker VCL application. That's a web server that displays a VCL form. It supports HTTP using an Indie HTTP server component. Click Next. Now on the next page, I can specify the port that will be used by the web application to listen for client requests. So for this DataSnap REST server, I'm going to use port 81. And let me test port, make sure no one's using it. Correct, so the test port succeeded. So by using HTTP, it's a much faster communications, or I could have chosen to use HTTPS, which is a more secure communication. Click Next. Now on this server features page, I'm going to select also add server methods class. By doing so, it will provide me with some sample methods and a sample web files that I can use for testing purposes. Click Next. Here on the server methods ancestor class, I can either pick a T component, a T data module, or a TDS server module. I'm going to pick the TDS server module, because by doing so, it's also going to give me the iApp server interface. And click Next. Here, I get to select my project location. So this directory is the root directory of the web application. So this is the output directory of the project executable and the location of web application files such as my JavaScript, HTML, and cascading style sheet files, plus other static files. So for this application, I'm going to save it in my CodeRage 7 DataSnap REST server and say finish. So now everything we need for our C++ Builder DataSnap server has been created for us. For our C++ DataSnap REST application server, we see that 3 units got created for us. Now the first is Form Unit 1, a CPP. This is our VCL Form GUI client that we can use to start and stop the DataSnap server. We also have a Web Module unit, and this contains our server setup. So this Web Module unit has all of the components nicely laid out for us. So for example, if we look at the proxy generator component in the object inspector, if we look at the writer, we see that it's set to JavaScript REST. So this means it's going to generate JavaScript for us. We can also choose other types of writers, such as C++ Builder REST or C++ Builder DBX. The third component is our server methods unit. And now in this unit is where we're going to put all of our methods that we want exposed to our users. So now the wizard has already created 2 methods for us, one called echo string and another one called reverse string. So what we are going to do when we go back into HTML5 Builder is have our web client connect to this DataSnap server using the DataSnap REST Client Module that we will create in HTML5 Builder, and then access this reverse function method and return the results back to our web client. I'll start my DataSnap server now by saying run F9. So here's my DataSnap REST server. I'm going to start it. So right now it's running on my local host machine, listening on port 81. So let me open up a browser window and test the functions that we have on our DataSnap server. So here we have a HTML page that got generated by our DataSnap wizard that we can use to test the reverse string function. And this is going to be the reverse string function that we want to call from our HTML5 Builder web client. So to test it here, I'm going to click reverse string, and it returns correctly. So at this point, I am going to close down C++ Builder. And I'm going to keep our DataSnap server running. Now that we have our DataSnap server started, we can now generate our DataSnap REST Client Module. On our new DataSnap REST Client Module dialog, we need to fill in these properties. So for protocol, we're going to use HTTP. For language, we can choose a programming language for the module. It can either be PHP or it can be JavaScript. If we choose PHP, the connection will be set up with rad PHP component library components. Now, if you want it to be generated with pure PHP code, then we'd simply check PHP and generate pure PHP code. For this implementation, we are going to use PHP. For the host where our DataSnap server is running, that's our local host. And when we created the server, we had it listening on port 81. Now, depending on how you have your DataSnap server set up, you also may need to fill in the URL path, content, username and password if you added security. So for this example we're using here a C++ DataSnap server. It's using HTTP. It's listening on port 81 and its IP address in my case is localhost, and we're going to use PHP as the language, and I'll say OK. Our DataSnap REST Client Module gets created for us. So we see here 2 files get added to our web server project. So by default, one is called Client Class Unit and the other one is called Client Module Unit. So this module, the Client Module Unit, it contains a DataSnap REST connection component, and this is responsible for the connection with the DataSnap server. It also includes a read method called read server methods, and this returns an instance of the class tServer methods. Now this class is defined in the client class unit file, and it contains the methods on the DataSnap server that we are going to be able to call from our web client. So the client class unit file has all of our DataSnap admin functions, plus also all of our DataSnap server methods functions. So in particular, here's our reverse string function from our DataSnap server that we want to be able to call from our HTML5 Builder created web client. And let's do that next. So now let's see what we need to do to be able to call DataSnap methods from our web client. So let's go back to our Unit 1, which is our HTML5 Builder DataSnap web client. Let me go into its code view. And the first thing I want to do is add our client module Unit 1 to this PHP file. So we do that by using this icon, use unit, and I want to add the client module Unit 1 to our application, and by doing so we get the required ones, client module unit 1.php. So now whenever we want to call a DataSnap method in my code, all I need to do is include a global variable for our client module data module, and then I can call the method from its server methods client property. So let's do that next. In our web client, we are now going to replace the function button one click code with the code needed to display the results of the DataSnap call for the function reverse string to our web client. For my function button one click, the first thing I need to do is to prepare to use the client module data module global variable. So I'll say global, and I want to use the client module data module 1. So next, I want to be able to call the DataSnap reverse string method, and I want to pass it the input the input field content. And we'll do that by creating a variable called ds, and we will use the client module data module 1, and from there we have access to the server methods client, and from the server methods client we can call its reverse string. And to the reverse string method, we want to pass in the input from our top edit box. Okay, so now we can print the result from DataSnap call to the output edit box. So we can still use this edit box output text, and we're going to set that equal to our DS variable and get its result. Alright, so that should do it. So just to repeat what we're doing here, so we are calling the reverse string function from a DataSnap server. The value in our top edit box is our input, and the results are going to get displayed on the bottom edit box. Let's now run our application, and let's see if we can get a DataSnap web client to talk through the DataSnap REST Client Module to access a DataSnap server and call the functions exposed by the DataSnap server. So I'm going to switch from the code view back to the design view. So once again, we're going to use this HTML5 Builder DataSnap web client. This time when we click the execute button, it's going to use the DataSnap REST Client Module to access a DataSnap server and call the functions exposed by the DataSnap server. So I'm going to go ahead and run. I should bring up our page in a web browser. I'm going to enter for input Embarcadero. I will click the execute button. It should go through our DataSnap REST Client Module and access our backend DataSnap server, call the reverse string function, and return results to our bottom edit box. Wonderful. So that worked beautiful. This ends this session. To summarize, we saw how we can use HTML5 Builder for multi-tier app development using a DataSnap server and a DataSnap REST Client Module. We saw how, using HTML5 Builder, we can create a server web application, and how to create and use a DataSnap REST Client Module to access a DataSnap server, have a web client call the functions exposed by the DataSnap server, and return the results back to our calling web client. With the release of HTML5 Builder, Embarcadero has focused on bringing you the latest and best in web standards and technologies. You can use HTML5 Builder for rapid visual development using today's web technologies. You can target 4 mobile platforms with just one HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript codebase as a standalone client that you can sell or distribute through standard app stores. For client-side front-end development, you can leverage HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS3 in your applications. You can also do server-side development with PHP with access to popular databases. CSS3, the third version of the standard style sheet language, is supported in HTML5 Builder, so you can now get access to advanced style properties on every control and easily create CSS3 animations. And lastly, you can build mobile apps with access to hardware components like audio, video, camera, accelerometer, and so much more. Thank you all for participating in CodeRage 7. We greatly appreciate you attending and making this event a huge success. At this point, let's open up the session for any questions you might have. So I hope all enjoyed this presentation as much as I enjoyed creating it. It was a lot of fun getting to work with HTML5 Builder to connect to a DataSnap server.
And C++ Builder.
And C++ Builder.
All right, excellent. So, questions. Is there anything in DataSnap for Delphi that I cannot do in DataSnap for C++?
Not that I know of.
And I would say the same thing. Where can I deploy DataSnap servers? Windows and Windows Server only?
That's correct, right? Currently today, DataSnap is a Windows-only process or service, but I believe we do have some roadmap plans to add DataSnap to other platforms.
That is correct. We are investigating other platforms. All right. Can I build C++ client applications that talk to C++ DataSnap servers?
Absolutely.
And of course, you can write C++ client applications that talk to Delphi DataSnap servers as well. Either way is all good. Let's see. Can I create DataSnap servers using C++ that work with HTML5 Builder that can run as ISAPI DLLs, or do they need to be HTTP REST executables only?
I missed half of that question. Maybe you can repeat it.
Oh, sorry. Can I create DataSnap servers that work with HTML5 Builder that can run as ISAPI DLLs, or do they need to be HTTP and REST executables only?
Oh, no, they can be ISAPI services.
Can I
DataSnap
have...
side, go ahead.
No, go, finish if you want.
Yes, so the answer is yes to that last question.
Gotcha. Can I have DataSnap, Delphi, and C++ service applications DLLs on the same machine? And the answer is yes.
Yes, absolutely yes.
Is there any way to version the interfaces of a DataSnap server built in C++, or do I need to do the versioning myself?
By versioning, what are you implying?
Maybe if Samwise can clarify that question. We're not sure what he means. Can you build 64-bit C++ DataSnap servers? The answer is yes. Are you still hearing me, Al?
Yes, but unfortunately you break up, but yes, the answer is yes to that.
Okay, got it. Here's an off-topic question. Has your area of Long Island recovered a bit from Hurricane Sandy?
Yeah, so thanks for asking that. So in my area, I was 13 days without power and heat and electricity, but now all is good. So thank you for asking that question.
All right, thank you. I'm glad you're okay. I could just hear you. I could hear you breaking up as well, but we'll get through this. If I have two C++ DataSnap servers where one has a set of interfaces and then I update and add interfaces, how do I know which C++ DataSnap server has been deployed? And can I tell from different DataSnap clients which version of a DataSnap server I am talking to?
Okay, so that I know that so the DataSnap REST Client Module is pointing to the IP address and the port of that running DataSnap server. So for updated DataSnap servers, that module gets regenerated, recreated, so it has access to all the current methods on that versioned DataSnap server.
Okay, and there's only one more question in here. That's Can HTML5 web pages also be in SAPI?
In SAPI.
And I actually don't believe we've supported NSAPI for quite some time. I could be wrong. But it was basically the Netscape server, and the way we did it, I think we really created iSAPI DLLs that were then used by the NSAPI API. I'm not sure. I don't remember exactly how that worked, but I don't believe we have that support anymore.
Yeah, I believe you're correct, but I will follow up just to make sure.
Cool. All right. Anything else you want to add? There's no more questions for you, Al. Actually, there's one right here. Are you promoting the SQLite apps over the Interbase to Go? No. You should definitely use Interbase if you can, but we are supporting SQLite because SQLite is very much prevalent on mobile devices, so therefore we are supporting that as well, and we're supporting it on the desktop as well because a lot of people use it on the desktop as well to just have the same database. And of course, Interbase to Go has a lot more capabilities than SQLite. So by all means, if you want to use a real database engine, then you should use Interbase to Go.
Correct.
SQLite is very limited in the number of field types and stuff like that it has. So anyway, with that, again, thank you very much. Oh, we keep getting questions. All right, we can keep going. That's excellent. Can you build an HTML5 phone application that utilizes DataSnap on the server but also uses HTML5 on the server instead of C++?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so HTML5 Builder has built-in capabilities for mobile phone development. We've taken all of the jQuery mobile components, both user interfaces and hardware components, to rapidly allow you to create mobile clients, and those mobile clients can also connect to the back-end DataSnap servers, access those methods, and return the results back to the calling mobile client.
All right, thank you very much, Al, for that presentation once again.
My pleasure.